Hello Sudoku friends, welcome to a hard puzzle from sudoku.com. Let's see how this one plays out. First of all, we can see an 8 blocking over here and this one blocking down, so an 8 must go in this cell here. There's a 2 blocking across here and one more blocking across this way, so a 2 must go here. Now we got 2 blocking up and down and over, so this square must be a 2. And I think we got all the 2s. Well, we got a 2 blocking over here and 1 blocking down, so a 2 must go here. And yes, those are all the 2s for this puzzle. We only need 2 digits here, and they have to be a 5 and a 3. There's a 3 blocking down, so a 3 must go here and a 5 here. That was painless.
Painless.
A 1 and a 3 block across here, so these 2 squares must be a 1 and a 3. And these squares therefore must be a 4, 9, and a 5. So that means that this square cannot be a 5, and the 5 blocks down here, and that gives us a 5 for this square here. These now must be a 7 and a 6. We got a 7 blocking down, so this is a 6, and this therefore must be a 7. So we were talking about these squares being a 4, 5, and a 9, and that means that this must be an 8. Now this 8 blocks up here and the 8 blocks across here. One of these squares therefore must be an 8. And they block all the way over here. This 8 blocks all the way over here. We got an 8 blocking here and one more blocking here. So an 8 is forced into this square. This 1 blocks up here. So one of these squares must be a 1. And they block over here. This 1 blocks over here and this 1 blocks up. So a 1 must go here. These 2 squares must be a 9 and a 6. And we can't solve them yet. But we got a 4 blocking over here. So one of these must be a 4 blocking up. And we've got this 4 blocking up and the 4 blocking over. So one of these squares must be a 4. And there's another way to establish that simple fact, namely that this square is blocked by this 4. This square is blocked by this 4. So only these 2 squares can be 4s in this column.
So much easier.
But I think it's good practice to try looking at problems from different perspectives, because we're often forced to use all kinds of methods to find a digit. But we do have a 4 blocking over here and 1 blocking down, and we've got a 4 blocking up. So without a doubt, this must be a 4. And these 4s block across here now, making this a 4. We got 3 empty squares to fill, and they have to be filled with an 8, 9, and I believe a 3. Yes. An 8 must go here or here because of the 2 8s blocking these 2 squares. So let's see, an 8, 8. No, it's not conclusive, so I'm not going to touch any of these for the time being. I do know, however, that a 1 must go in one of these 2 squares because this 1 blocks here and this 1 blocks here. I also know that a 6 must go up here somewhere because of these 2 6s blocking here and here. So we got a 1 and a 6 nailed down for 2 of these 3 squares. Besides the 1 and the 6, we will also need a 7, 5, and a 9. I'll have to work a little harder. Harder! Everything. But I really don't have to work hard to figure out that this 7 blocks across and this blocks up, and therefore gives me a 7 for this square. It wasn't really a hardship finding that 7, 3, 6, and a 9 now for these squares. And there's a 6 and a 3 blocking this square, which therefore must be a 9. And these two now must be a 6 and a 3. And now one of these must be a 9. And I believe the two others, we discussed that earlier, they have to be an 8 and a 3. So I only know that this square must be an 8 or a 3. And that's, I think, all I can say about those. But a 5, 7, 8 for these squares, is that something or isn't it? I believe it isn't, because both of these squares can be a 7. But we do know that we need a 1, 3, 4, and a 5 for these squares, and we've got a 4 and a 5 in the block, so this is certainly going to be a 1 or a 3. And a 4 and a 5 must go in two of these squares here. And we've got a 3 and a 4 up here, so this is a 1 or a 5. It's all very good, but it doesn't really give me anything, does it?
I haven't got anything, honest.
So I'm zooming in on this square here because I believe it can only be a 9. We know that this square can't be a 1. We know that this square can't be a 1. So this square cannot be a 1 because a 1 must go in one of these two squares. So this square can't be a 1. It can also not be a 2, nor can it be a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. So yes, it is in fact a 9. And the 9 blocks down here, this 9 blocks up, this 9 blocks over, so this is a 9. These two squares must be a 1 and a 6. Before I try to solve that, I need to look over here and see that this 9 blocks across and this 9 blocks up. So we might as well enter a 9 here while we remember it. This 9 blocks down now, making this a 9, and the other digit was a 6, wasn't it? Now we only need to fill two squares here, namely a 7 and a 1. I believe, yes, a 1. The 1 blocks here, so the 7 is forced to go here and the 1 is forced to go here. So what does that mean for the rest of the grid?
But what does it mean?
I can push a 9 into this cell here because this 9 blocks over and so does this. So yes, a 9 goes here. And we know that one of these had to be a 9 because of the 9 blocking over. Now this 9 blocks down, making this a 9. We also know that one of these two had to be an 8 because of the 8 blocking up. So we know this is now the 8, and therefore this must be the 3. And that would give us an 8 for this square here. This square blocks up, this square blocks over, or these 8 block, therefore this is an 8. We now have all the 2's and all the 8's in this grid. And these now must be a 7 and a 5. The 7 blocks here, so the 5 must go here and the 7 here. And we have a 7 now blocking over, 1 blocking up, making this a 7. Blocking over, this blocking up, making this a 7. And we now also have all the 7's in the grid. This square can only be a 5. And that means that one of these squares must be a 5. We still need a 5 for the top row, though. So these two 5's block up here, making this a 5. These must be a 1 and a 6. We have a 1 in the column, making this a 6 and this a 1. The 1 blocks down, the 1 blocks over, 1 goes here. These two squares must be a 3 and a 6. 6 blocks down. So 3 goes here and 6 here, making this a 6 and this a 3, I believe, yes. Anything here about the 1, 3? No, not yet. What about these two then? They must be a 4 and a 3. There's a 4 blocking up, yes, so the 3 goes here and the 4 here. And that gives me a 3 for this square and a 1 for this. And a 1 for this square. We are making good progress now. The 4 blocks up here, so this must be a 4. And this, therefore, must be a 5. And that makes this a 5. This must be a 4, and this must be a 9 if memory serves. And this square must therefore be a 3. Yeah, there you go, a hard puzzle from sudoku.com. I have to remind you, I believe, that I didn't classify it as a hard puzzle. Sudoku.com did. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed it and that you will come back for more soon.